you know Kevin Spacey?
Yes.
Also an Academy Award winner.
Yeah, yeah.
He does what I think is a pretty good impression of you.
Well, I don't.
They say revenge is a dish best served cold. Al Pacino doesn't flip tables or throw tantrums like other Hollywood legends. He goes quiet. And when Pacino cuts you off, he cuts deep, permanently, and without explanation. For decades, he's been the heartbeat of modern cinema, carrying entire generations of storytelling on his shoulders through Serpico, The Godfather, and Heat. But behind those volcanic performances lies a man who doesn't forgive, doesn't forget, and never gives second chances. What makes Pacino's feuds so terrifying isn't the screaming, it's the silence. Unlike other actors who wage war through tabloids and talk shows, Pacino simply erases you from his world. No dramatic confrontations, no public statements, just the devastating realization that one of cinema's greatest actors has decided you no longer exist. And once you're on that list, you're never getting off it. What I'm about to reveal will expose the dark side of an acting legend who spent 50 years systematically destroying relationships with some of Hollywood's biggest names. These aren't stories about creative differences or professional disagreements. These are tales of burned bridges, buried grudges, and permanent exiles that reveal how Al Pacino's legendary intensity extends far beyond his performances into a pattern of cold, calculated revenge that has left careers in ruins. The first casualty should have been a perfect match. William Friedkin was fresh off The French Connection when he partnered with Pacino for Cruising in 1980, a dark dive into New York's underground scene. What began as creative synergy quickly dissolved into professional contempt that would define both men's careers in ways neither expected. Friedkin, known for his meticulous preparation, expected Pacino to show up rehearsed and disciplined. Instead, Pacino arrived late, with few lines learned, improvising in ways that completely clashed with Friedkin's rigid directorial style. The director later called him unprepared and disrespectful to the material, but that was just the beginning of their war. In a frustrated tone rarely seen from the normally composed director, Friedkin said Pacino treated the set like a frat house, but Pacino, strong-willed and visceral by nature, resented Friedkin's rigid control and refused direction, insisting he knew his character better than anyone. Reports say Friedkin grew so exasperated he nearly fired Pacino multiple times, later delivering the quote that would end their relationship forever. "He was the biggest disappointment I've worked with." That quote landed like a punch, and the isolation was immediate. Cast and crew recall late-night arguments, shouting matches, and frustrated silences as two titans of cinema destroyed each other professionally. Pacino never worked with Friedkin again, and more tellingly, there were no joint interviews, no Hollywood reunions, no collaborative buzz when either man earned accolades. Their only shared legacy is a cult film overshadowed by buried bitterness. But if you think Friedkin's public criticism was brutal, wait until you hear how Pacino handled a director who tried to contain his volcanic energy. When Glengarry Glen Ross hit theaters, critics hailed Pacino's performance as masterful, sharp, raw, and tightly coiled. But behind the camera, his relationship with director James Foley was far less celebrated. Foley, known for his precise visual style, quickly found himself overwhelmed by Pacino's unpredictable energy as the actor would shift tone mid-take, drop scripted lines, and refuse to rehearse scenes the same way twice. Foley reportedly described working with Pacino as exhausting, a constant tug-of-war between control and chaos. One crew member later recalled, "Foley wanted tension. Pacino wanted fire. That balance nearly broke the set." While the end result was undeniably compelling, it was clear that neither man wanted a repeat experience. The lack of public feud didn't mean there wasn't a divide. It just meant both men chose the silent exit. When asked in an interview if he'd direct Pacino a second time, Foley answered with a tight smile, "Some performances are best left once." In an industry where second chances are currency, the absence of even a whisper of future collaboration said everything about their destroyed relationship. The most painful betrayal came from someone Pacino both revered and quietly resented, a legend whose shadow he could never escape. When Al Pacino landed the role of Michael Corleone in The Godfather, it changed his life, but also brought him face-to-face with Marlon Brando, an icon who would become his greatest source of professional resentment. Their chemistry on screen was undeniable, but off-screen was far more complicated and ultimately destructive. Brando was already a legend, and when he showed up late to rehearsals or clashed with Francis Ford Coppola, the studio let it slide. Pacino, then still unknown, didn't get the same grace. The double standard gnawed at him like poison. During awards season, the tension exploded when Brando won the Oscar for Best Actor, while Pacino was relegated to supporting actor, despite carrying much of the film. Feeling snubbed and frustrated by Brando's outsized credit, Pacino boycotted the ceremony entirely. In a later interview, he admitted, "I didn't think it was right. I was in that movie more than he was." That wasn't just a complaint, it was a window into a deeper rivalry that would define his career. They never reunited on screen, and while Pacino never publicly attacked Brando, he also rarely praised him beyond polite admiration. The most shocking revelation involves Pacino's complicated relationship with his supposed cinematic equal. Al Pacino and Robert De Niro are often grouped together as the twin titans of American cinema. They've shared billing in The Godfather Part 2, Heat, and The Irishman, but their actual relationship has always been professionally cold and personally non-existent. When Heat was filming, everyone expected fireworks from their first face-to-face scene, but behind the camera, they kept their distance like opposing armies. According to insiders, they barely spoke outside of takes. De Niro preferred preparation and quiet, while Pacino wanted intensity and improvisation. Director Michael Mann had to tailor his directing style around both actors, treating them like separate storms heading for collision. Pacino once said, "Bob's a craftsman. I'm more instinct. We work differently." That wasn't warm praise. It was a professional dismissal. The divide showed itself again on The Irishman, where sources described a professional but ice-cold energy between them. No laughing between takes, no bonding off set, with Scorsese reportedly acting as a buffer. When Pacino said, "We're not friends, we just show up," that wasn't honesty. It was the brutal truth behind a legendary pairing that never really connected. Even Pacino's treatment of co-stars reveals his capacity for lasting cruelty. When Scarface was casting, Michelle Pfeiffer wasn't a popular choice, and Pacino didn't hold back his skepticism. He reportedly told producers she was too soft for the role and lacked the edge needed to play Tony Montana's love interest. During auditions, Pfeiffer later said she could feel his disapproval. "I knew he didn't want me there. I had to prove I belonged in the room." Even after director Brian De Palma overruled Pacino's doubts, the friction lingered throughout the entire shoot. Pacino remained distant, keeping her at arm's length with cold professionalism. Even after Scarface became a cult classic, Pacino rarely mentioned Pfeiffer in interviews, and they never worked together again, a testament to his to hold grudges even when proven wrong. The final case reveals how even legendary partnerships can be destroyed by personality clashes. Al Pacino and Gene Hackman worked together only once on Scarecrow in 1973. But that single collaboration was enough to spark years of subtle distance. The film was a critical success, but behind the scenes, their personalities clashed immediately. Pacino was sensitive and method-driven, while Hackman was blunt and preferred efficiency over exploration. Pacino once hinted at the tension. "Working with Gene, it wasn't the easiest. We had different ideas." That understated comment spoke volumes about their mutual hostility. On set, Hackman would reportedly challenge scenes and express frustration with Pacino's pace, with one crew member saying, to him, Al was wasting time. After Scarecrow, there were no more pairings, no public praise, and no fond recollections. In a business that thrives on legendary reunions, their professional paths never crossed again. Two legends who refused to share the stage more than once. These stories reveal the real Al Pacino, a man whose legendary intensity extends far beyond his performances into a pattern of cold calculation that has systematically destroyed relationships throughout his career. He doesn't slam doors or create tabloid headlines. He just closes them quietly and never opens them again. In an industry where feuds often become theater, Pacino's silence is the final cut. You don't hear the argument, you just notice who never shows up again.